Hi guys! So today's video is going to be my August TBR, and August is a little bit of a busy month for me because my work schedule picks up. It's my husband's birthday, it's my mom's birthday, and my husband and I are performing in the pit orchestra for West Side Story, so we've got a bunch of rehearsals this month. So I'm looking at the pile of books next to me. I don't know if I'm gonna manage to get through them all, but fingers crossed. Because it's my husband's birthday coming up though, I know that he really loves comic books, and I've been trying to get more into comic books. So I've put a lot more on my TBR this month, and especially some of his favorites, so that I can try to like bond with my spouse about his favorite comic books. The first comic book on the list, and definitely one that is a favorite for a ton of people, would be Watchmen by Alan Moore. I think a lot of people who don't know anything about Watchmen are under the impression that it's another superhero comic, and it's really not your typical superhero story. It's kind of more of superheroes after they've been superheroes. It's really tragic and depressing and a very bleak outlook on the world, and my husband absolutely loves it. Another favorite comic of his that I plan to read this month is American Vampire by Scott Snyder. It follows a series of kind of different sorts of vampires, and one specifically that the story follows is the American vampire, and they have different abilities and weaknesses than your traditional European vampires. And there's also one character in the book that you kind of root for because she's actually a decent human being, and she gets turned into a vampire. Another graphic novel that I'm planning to get around to that I've actually already started this series, and that would be Fables by Bill Willingham. This series is so much fun. If you guys have never read comic books, I highly recommend starting with this series because it's essentially a fairy tale retelling, which is a very common thing for people to grasp onto. It's a theme that a lot of people like in stories, and this particular one follows a couple of main characters from a bunch of different fairy tales, those being Snow from Snow White, Bigby from Big Bad Wolf, and then there's a few others that are the main characters in the story. The last comic book that I'm hoping to get to this month would be Lazarus by Greg Rucka, and this series I'm actually planning on reading the first, I've got the bookmark in it, the first what would be paperback edition of this today before the month is over, and then read the second one this upcoming month. And this follows a story about if the top 1% of the wealthiest people in the world essentially ruled the world, and this main character, who is what's known as a Lazarus, is a person that's kind of almost like a super soldier who is assigned to protect a specific family in the top 1%. Getting into my regular books now, the first on the list is one that I had to put as soon as I finished the Mistborn trilogy. I knew I wanted to read more Brandon Sanderson. I know that Sanderson has another book in the Stormlight Archive coming out this year, so I'm gonna finally start Way of Kings. I plan on just reading part 1 this month because this book is massive, and I honestly couldn't even tell you what it's about. I just know everybody says it's awesome, that it's even better than Mistborn, which I don't even think is possible, and that it's just all around got a good balance of people's pasts in the book. The characters are really interesting, the plot's really interesting, so I'm just so excited. Because my month is so busy coming up, I figured I wanted to grab a few books that weren't quite as big as some of these other adult fantasy books out there. So the next book is the first book in the Dresden Files series by Jim Butcher. This is a series that follows a wizard detective in kind of our world, and I've heard that these are lots of fun. There's a ton of books in the series, but they're supposed to just kind of, they're fun. They're interesting and they're fun, and they're kind of like mystery detective type books, but with a little bit of fantasy flair. Kind of with a similar premise, I also want to read Murder in Absentia by Asaph Mayer. This follows a Sherlock Holmes type character, but Romanesque flair, and I think it sounds really fun, and it also isn't that big of a book, which I need a little bit of a break because I've been reading like really fat books recently, and I need a few shorter books to mix up in here and there. Next up is a book that I read a long time ago when I was way too young and I did not understand what was going on, but I remember thinking it was cool, and there was Necromancers. And one of you guys has been letting me know that you absolutely love this series. It's one of your favorite series of all time, and you were really wanting me to get around to it. So I kind of bumped around some of the books that I was planning on reading and decided to finally get back into reading the Sabriel series by Garth Nix. Like I said, I've read this before, but it has been so long that I don't really remember very vividly what it was about, but I'll read a little snippet on the back. It says, it's a tale of dark secrets, deep love, and dangerous magic, and like I said, I know there's necromancy in it, and it's supposed to be kind of dark, and I believe that there's multiple different sides of the kingdom, and one side is more technologically advanced and the other is kind of kept back. But I know that you guys, some of you have said you really like it, and I remember really liking it when I was young, but I was just really confused, so I'm excited to pick this one back up again. The next book is technically more science fiction that is fantasy, and that would be the third book in the Red Rising trilogy by Pierce Brown, which is called Morningstar. I buddy read Golden Sun, which is the second book in the series, last month with Derby Lane Reading, The Reading Puppet, and Leanna's Library, and we all really enjoyed the second one. I loved the first one. I really liked the second one, and I'm excited to get to this third one. I've heard that it's a great conclusion to the trilogy, but that there's another one coming out, and so we're really pumped about it. But this series follows a man named Darrow, who has always been within the class of people known as the Reds, and people in society are separated based off of colors, and his color group is very much suppressed, and he is trying to free his people from being suppressed. The story is very bleak and blunt and raw and kind of dark at times and violent and action-packed, and it's told in first person in a very straightforward way. It is not filled with fluff like your traditional adult fantasy, adult sci-fi books usually are, so it's really gripping the entire time. Next up, I've got some young adult fantasy as well, the first being Our Dark Duet by V.E. Schwab. The first one follows these two main characters, a boy and a girl, and they grow up in our world in the future where something has happened that's caused, whenever people do sinful or terrible acts, those acts then manifest themselves into different kinds of monsters, and one of the characters is a monster and one is a human, and they meet. I buddy read the first one with Lauren Mays, whose channel I'll link down below, and I think we're gonna be buddy reading this one. If you guys are interested in buddy reading any of these, let me know in the comment section down below, because I always love to buddy read. Speaking of buddy reading, I'm going to be buddy reading the next book with a Bookstagram friend, and it is called Roar by Cora Carmack. I got this recently in my Unicorn Crate subscription box, and it sounds so cool. It's about a girl who is the heir to a throne of people that have storm magic, and she currently doesn't have any storm magic, and she is trying to figure out a way to either gain that storm magic, or her mother wants her to marry into a family of people that have storm magic and things like that. So she's trying to find a way to basically acquire this magic and rule her kingdom. Sounds way cooler than I'm making it. I'm making it sound kind of cheesy, but it sounds super cool. I like the idea of there being storm magic. I think that the magic system itself sounds really interesting, and I think it sounds like a good YA fantasy all around with a really interesting, unique main character. Next up is a book that my friend gave me, and that would be Unblemished by Sarah Ella. My friend says this is one of her favorite books. It's about a girl who has something on her face, some kind of a blemish type thing that she's really self-conscious about, and she somehow, it seems, possibly goes into another world, almost like a portal fantasy type, where this skin condition is suddenly viewed as something good, almost like she's like blessed in a way, or she might have some kind of powers or something. So it sounds really interesting, and I've been wanting to get around to this for a while, but just had so many other things on my TBR, so I'm super excited to finally get around to it. And the last book on my August TBR is Days of Blood and Starlight by Laini Taylor. This is the second book in the Daughter of Smoke and Bone series, and I read Daughter of Smoke and Bone in June, and when you first start reading it, you think, oh, this is just your typical YA fantasy book. It feels very tropey, and then it does a complete 180, about 200-ish pages, 300 pages-ish into the book, and completely changes and suddenly becomes very unique and very different from a lot of other books I've ever read. Anyway, that is it from my August TBR. If any of you are interested in reading any of these books with me, let me know in the comment section down below. But anyway, if you guys liked the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Click the little bell icon so you get notified when I post new videos, and check out some of my videos right over here. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you guys later. Bye!